We are reaching sports nirvana as all major sports are booming with action. The Heat and the Lakers finally met in Game 1 of the Finals, and everything went right for the Lakers, while everything went wrong for the Heat. On the diamond, the MLB 60-game sprint of a season finally saw its runners cross the finish line as the playoffs are underway. The Wild Card Series is looking to wrap up as we've seen teams advance and some teams go home. The NFL is facing its first COVID-19 hiccup as it heads into Week 4 of the season. And the NHL crowns its first ever bubble champion. Will the Heat overcome adversity? Will the MLB Playoffs madness continue? Can the NFL handle COVID? Does the Stanley Cup have an asterisk? Me and my panel will dive headfirst, as this is only the best of the best. We are talking Hall Pro. Welcome back to Hall Pro, as I'm joined by my illustrious panel of analysts. We have Meagan Gonzalez and we have Balsamo. Panel, how are we feeling?
Doing well, ready to talk some sports.
As good as I can right now.
Awesome. And Meagan, I just want to ask, are you okay?
I'm good.
Awesome. So we're heading into the NBA Finals as we see the Lakers versus the Heat. I'm sure this is the matchup everybody expected to happen. And we saw Game 1, and Game 1 was pretty ugly for the Heat as the Lakers were up as much 30 in the game. And unfortunately for the Heat, we saw 3 of its main players fall to injury. We saw Bam Adebayo with a shoulder injury. We saw Goran Dragic with a foot injury. And we saw Jimmy Butler with an ankle injury. So I asked this question to you guys. Balsamo, how do we feel the Heat can overcome these injuries? How much of an impact will it have on this series?
I think it will have an impact on the series, but I don't think it'll be incredibly drastic. I think the Heat can still definitely make things interesting. They still have their leader. It doesn't look like Jimmy Butler's going to miss much time because of this. However, the damage to their inside presence is what's really damaging. The Lakers have Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis down low, and without Bam Adebayo, they don't have much to compete down there. We know they can shoot, so Dragic isn't as catastrophic as losing Adebayo, but it's going to be a lot harder. But if there's anyone that can do it in the bubble, it's Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, these injuries are very concerning because who knows how they're going to play afterwards. So to me, it's really concerning. And the Lakers were the fan favorite going in, so the fact that they killed the Heat at the beginning, who knows where the series is going to take them.
Especially in that Game 1, we saw a just really lopsided game. After the Heat went to a nice lead in the beginning of the first quarter, we saw a 13-point lead in the beginning, but then the Lakers went on an unprecedented 75-30 run, which is it's demoralizing to a team, especially in the finals. And we saw the Miami Heat team. It has the first team ever to have 3 different leading scorers in the playoffs. It had Goran Dragic, it had Jimmy Butler, and also had Bam Adebayo. So those are the 3 guys that are kind of questionable right now. Bam is questionable, and it looks like Dragic is going to be out. Jimmy Butler, he has the heart of a lion, so it looks like he's going to continue to play and go through it. But one thing is, do you think that the Heat are going to be able to make this thing interesting going along? Because as Meagan said, the Lakers are the favorites by a lot, and a lot of people try to compare them, and the Lakers are the better team in most eyes. So do you guys think the Heat can make this interesting? Brendan?
I do think they can keep it interesting because last night the Lakers shot 40% from 3, and it'll be hard to keep that up for the entire series. And we know how well the Heat can shoot on a good night. So if they have a good night in this series, I can definitely see them pulling out at least 1 or 2 wins.
Yeah, if you had asked me before Game 1, I would have said no way. It would have been the Lakers all the way. But now with these injuries, I'm questioning it, honestly.
All right, now flipping over to the other side, we saw the Lakers have an amazing game. LeBron James had a nice 25, 13, and 9, and almost a triple-double. One assist away. And then Anthony Davis had 34, 9, and 5. These are monster numbers from the 2 best players on the court, it looks like. So my question to you guys is, looking right now, being that the Lakers are up 1-0, if they were to win the finals, who would be your finals MVP right now? What do you think, Brendan?
For me, who did Markieff Morris call the best player in the world after Game 1? It was not LeBron James. It was Anthony Davis. Personally, what I can see happening is the voters giving LeBron James, want to bust up his legacy. So they'd give him the MVP. But honestly, the way Anthony Davis dominated on both sides of the court last night, he just looked like a man amongst boys.
Yeah, see, I have to be with the cliche. I got to go with LeBron just because when you have his intensity, his leadership, and just his skill out on the court, I just feel like he can't be beat. And the fact that we saw that first game and how they dominated the Heat, I got to go with LeBron.
We did see LeBron James play a lot of that game, even though it was a blowout, and he almost finished with a triple-double. But I feel like LeBron does like giving Anthony Davis the spotlight in these situations. So he loves to get Anthony Davis going, likes to feed him the rock all the time. So I would not be surprised if Anthony Davis comes around with the Finals MVP. But like you said, Brendan, the voters might just give it to LeBron because he'd be the first player ever to win a Finals MVP with 3 teams. So personally, I also think LeBron is going to get it, but I would not be surprised if Anthony Davis comes away with the award. Now, shall we move on to the MLB Playoffs? The MLB Playoffs has been a wild show ever since it started. The whole 60-game season coming in with the expanded playoffs. This is the most amount of playoff teams we've seen in an MLB season in forever. And coming down to down the stretch of the season, we saw until the last game teams trying to fight their way back into the playoffs. So my question to you guys is, what is a team you are surprised made it to the playoffs? What do you think, Megan?
So with me, I got to go with the Cincinnati Reds. If we started off with the season, they were very slow. They had no offense. They had really nothing to offer. And then toward the end, like they won 11 of their last 14 games, and their pitching staff has been phenomenal. Trevor Bauer, Sonny Gray, they've all really stepped up. So I'm honestly not surprised they're there, and I'm very excited to see what they do.
For me, the Marlins shocked me. They brought up multiple pitchers making their MLB debuts. Some not even going past Single A. And they made it work, and they came in, I believe, second place in the NL East. They have Sandy Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez, Pablo Lopez, which was great for their pitching staff. And then, they have a below-average offense, but the pitching staff makes up for it. But now they're really challenged because they just lost Starling Marte yesterday to a broken hand. So we'll have to see where they go from here.
The Miami Marlins are consistently one of the worst teams in the league, at least the bottom 3. And it's such a refreshing sight to see the Fish make it into the playoffs. And they are undefeated in the playoffs in their franchise history. And 2 times they made the playoffs, they won the World Series. So that was a refreshing sight to see. Another team for me was actually the Astros. The Astros, I expected to not be good at all because of the whole cheating scandal and the teams not being adjusted to playing the game the right way, not using the sign-stealing ways that they do. But I was surprised that they were going to make it because of how bad they looked this season. We saw George Springer and we saw Jose Altuve, and the rest of the team just hit poorly, which really solidifies the fact that they really relied on that system, honestly. So that's one team that I personally thought. But I do like the Marlins pick and the Reds. The Reds have been a mid-tier team for a long time, a bottom tier, and this was a breakout year for them. They had a lot of expectations coming in. They started off slow, as Megan said, but they really got hot at the end of the season and snuck their way in. Now, on the flip side of that, I want to know you guys' thoughts on the most disappointing team to make the playoffs, or the most disappointing team that didn't make the playoffs. So, Megan, what do you think?
So with this one, no surprise here, I have to go with the Giants. Honestly, people did not give them credit at first. They're starting off with a brand new team, basically a brand new manager with Gabe Kapler because they lost Bochy. So honestly, they had no credit going in, and they really picked up toward the mid of the season, toward the end, and they lost literally their last game. So I'm very disappointed. They really had to come up, but they just didn't make it in time.
The most disappointing team for me was the New York Mets. They had such a firepower offense, the best offense in MLB. They led the league in average. And they had Pete Alonso, Michael Conforto had a breakout season. Jeff McNeil is always consistently great. Brandon Nimmo just gets on base, but it was the pitching that killed them. Early in the season, they lost Stroman and Syndergaard. And outside of Jacob deGrom and the occasional great performance from Edwin Diaz, they had no shot. They had no shot. Edwin Diaz would sometimes blow saves as well, even though he had incredible strikeout numbers. Jacob deGrom was his usual self, and outside of that, was just putrid.
The Mets were definitely a team that had high expectations coming in, but another team in the NL East, the Philadelphia Phillies, they were loaded to the gills. They had probably the best catcher in football, in baseball. They have JT Realmuto, they have Bryce Harper, and they have Aaron Nola. This team had so much promise, and they couldn't get it through. So now there's questions of JT Realmuto signing in the offseason, and they did come down to the final game to see if they can make it in, but they fell short, and now the Phillies fans are left with wanting more. So I felt like that was a big disappointment for them. Now moving on into the wild card series, as now we're in the playoffs, the teams actually made it in. So the Yankees sweep, the Rays sweep, and believe it or not, the Astros sweep. So both leagues, what are some teams that you think have impressed you so far in this postseason? What do you think, Megan?
So with me, I had to go with the Rays. If anyone had watched the Rays and the Blue Jays, both games, they really exceeded both in offense and defense. I mean, the first game with Blake Snell's no-hitter until the sixth inning, basically, he thrived. And then with the second game, their pitching wasn't as great, but their offense was amazing. So I got to go with the Rays.
Hey, the Marlins won their first game. They haven't made the playoffs in 17 years, which is incredible that they came out and won their first game and kind of broke a streak there. But I also want to look at the White Sox. It really looked like the A's were team number 2 in the AL, and then now, as of now, they're tied 1-1, and they're in Game 3 right now because Giolito, pitched his butt off in Game 1. So really, the White Sox and the Marlins impressed me so far, even though the Marlins series is not done yet.
And this is going to be tough for me to say, but the Yankees have impressed me, but hear me out. The Yankees had World Series aspirations, and during the year, they have been so streaky. They went on a 10-0 run, and then they lost 15. They went 5 for 15 at one point. So they're such a streaky team, and they didn't really close out the season very well. But coming into the playoffs, they flipped a switch, and the Game 2 against Cleveland was an instant classic, I believe. Just the back and forth and the intensity of the game really took me aback because of how quickly the Yankees were able to flip a switch after they've been playing so bad at the end of the season. So they look very impressive, and they look like a team that no other team in the playoffs want to play right now as a 5th seed. But now moving on to the future, what are some potential round matchups that you'd like to see? What do you think, Brendan?
Well, we could get 4 division matchups in the division series. We already have Yankees-Rays. Then we could also have A's-Astros in the next round. Padres-Dodgers would be really fun, and then Marlins-Braves if possible. That would be so much fun and like an ideal situation for the league to have because it would bring so much attention to those series.
Yeah, I also said the A's and the Astros because the Astros are just coming off their sweep from the Twins, and the A's have really just been exceeding this season, so I'm really excited to see that matchup.
Awesome. I also like the pick of Padres and the Dodgers. They're such a great young team with the Padres and an established team with the Dodgers. So now flipping over to the Gridiron. Football finally had its first hiccup with COVID-19 as the game between the Steelers and the Titans has been postponed. And there were rumbles of having it on Monday night or switching it to the first ever Tuesday night football game. But it didn't really work out, and they're going to move it on to a later part in the season. So what do you guys think about this postponement? Do you think the NFL is prepared to handle a COVID-19 situation like this? What do you think, Brandon?
I'm not sure. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, I've already seen guys like Eric Ebron on Twitter complaining about, how the Titans situation is affecting him on the Steelers. And they're similar to the MLB as where they're not bubbling and they just play at the home stadiums without fans, sometimes with fans. I wouldn't be surprised if a very similar situation that happened in MLB happens to the NFL.
Yeah, and I can't say I'm happy that they're doing something about it, basically, because if they didn't, all the backlash they'd get. But like Brendan said, they're really not social distancing. They're traveling still. There's no bubble. So I honestly think it's going to get worse, so who knows?
And that's the one thing the NFL does not want to see is an outbreak like the MLB had in the Marlins situation, the Cardinals, and other teams. So it's very prevalent that the NFL really takes this and nips it in the bud so it doesn't really spread anywhere else because we have 11 people, part of the Titans team, test positive for COVID-19. That's a lot of people, and being that it's not a bubble situation, they're able to hang out with friends, go back to family, the airports, restaurants. Now they're presumably be quarantined, so they're not going to have any in-person duties right now, but being that there's so many people infected, the likelihood for spread could be increased because of that. So that's one thing the NFL has to do. The postponement was the right thing, but it's really hard to postpone games in the NFL, being that it's a 1 day a week. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they move this game further down the road. Now, getting away from games that are postponed, we're going to go into games that are actually happening. Week 4 is coming in, as I feel like this season is pretty moving along quickly. And I want to get your guys' thoughts on some matchups that you'd like to see in Week 4. What do you think, Megan?
So I'm really excited to see Kansas City versus New England. You got the recent Super Bowl champs against the powerful Cam Newton. So I'm really just excited for the Kansas City, New England. Curious to see how it'll go.
I'm curious to see how Atlanta Green Bay goes because Green Bay has proven that Aaron Rodgers still has it. They have a great offense. Atlanta proved that they have a great offense, and they just can't close. If they close, they could give Green Bay a real run for its money. And then Buffalo-Vegas will also be very interesting because Buffalo is a young, budding squad. They're starting off 3-0, and they have a real chance to prove that they're not just a fluke. They're a true contender.
Those are some great matchups, and one matchup I had in mind was the Dallas Cowboys versus the Cleveland Browns, because the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, they're down 1-2, and against the Browns, it's going to be real interesting to see because if they fall to the Browns in Baker Mayfield, that's really going to say a lot about their season. It could cut their season short. I mean, we've seen different things happen, but those Cowboys, they started off to a shaky start. They had the miracle win against Atlanta, but that Browns game, they cannot let that one fall. It's a must-win. They can't go down that easy, that early in the season. So that's the key matchup I have there. And we're going to head into the Stanley Cup Final. The Stanley Cup Final, we saw the Tampa Bay Lightning win its second Stanley Cup. And I want to get your guys' thoughts and reactions on the Bubble Championship. And did you guys see this coming? What do you think, Brendan?
So I wasn't surprised per se, but they weren't my first choice, especially if you take a look back at our NHL preview here at PTV, which I was fortunate to be part of. I actually had the Bruins and the Flyers coming out of the East, as my top 2 picks. So it wasn't a surprise as they were always competing for a Stanley Cup, but after last year where they just blew it in the first round, it was hard to see them go for it again.
Yeah, honestly, the Lightning were the fan favorite going in. They're a very well-constructed team if you watch them, especially during the playoffs, and they were predicted to win even just going into the playoffs, let alone in the middle of it, so I'm not surprised.
I definitely agree with those, and the Dallas Stars, they had a chance there, but they just fell short. But one thing I want to spark a conversation up with just a little bit is this is the first ever bubble champion in sports history. We've never seen bubbles before, and the NBA is going to crown theirs in just a bit. But the NHL, this is the first one ever. Now, there can be some misconstruing on, is this championship legitimate? Does it have an asterisk to it? I feel like it depends on the fan, who you ask. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on, do you think it is fair to assume that this Stanley Cup has an asterisk? What do you think, Brendan?
No asterisk. The Lightning are a great team. It's a team that's been built up for years and years now, and they've been making runs for at least the past 5 years. They're a great team with guys that played amazing in the bubble. And guess what? They weren't the only team in the bubble. Every other team started the same place. So every team got the same advantage that they got, and they won it. So it's only fair.
Yeah, and that's such a hard predicament to be in. I mean, stopping mid-season, having to pick up, I think they totally deserve the credit for the win. And like you said, it also depends on the fan. If I'm a Lightning fan, of course I'm going to say it counts, they work their hardest. But let's say I'm a fan of a different team. I may have a bunch of arguments saying this isn't fair, we didn't have the full season. So like you said, it really just depends on the fan.
Now, quickly here, I just want to get your thoughts. Do you guys feel that same way about the NHL with other sports, or do you think this is just an NHL kind of feeling you have towards the asterisk?
That's something I didn't consider, which for the NBA, I think it's very legitimate. But the real question mark arises with the MLB because a typical 162-game season is very different from a 60-game season with an extra wild card round, different rules considering extra innings. It's very, very different and nuanced. Personally, I think it counts because every team starts at the same position, but that's a tough one.
Yeah, especially with the playoffs, when they're taking an extra team like that, let's say that team does win the World Series. A lot of people may be mad or come for them with certain things like that. So, yeah, it's hard to tell.
It is very hard to tell, and it's 2020. This is the year to get funky. It is a funky year, so I believe that when you have bubble teams like that, all the teams are going through the same thing, and like Megan said, it depends on who you ask. If you're the fan of the team that wins, you're going to embrace it and celebrate like a regular championship, but if you're the rival team and the rival team wins, then you're going to think that championship is kind of tainted because of the situation. But you can look at it other way. COVID has presented many challenges itself and a lot of obstacles for these teams to go through. So some might say this is the hardest championship to win in recent memory. So having these teams go out there and battle during a pandemic, it does say a lot about the resilience of the team. But looks like that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for my panel, my analysts. This was Megan's first time on Hall Pro, so she did a great job. And Brendan, great job as well. But for Meagan Gonzalez, for Brendan Balsamo, and everybody else in our studio, I'm Rony Jerez. Thank you for watching.